Hello, and welcome to Portrait Lighting Techniques with Bobby Lane. I'm Richard Newman from Calumet, and I'm our education coordinator. What we'd like to do today is show you a little bit into Bobby's world of photography. Bobby's joined us today to teach you about lighting and share her skills with you. We're also going to show you some new products in action, a new battery pack, some new soft boxes, maybe a new reflector or two that you haven't seen before. All the accessories that come from the studio are just tools to help you shape and make better pictures. Bobby's been an educator and photographer for over 30 years. Her credits include the Santa Fe Workshops, the International Center of Photography in New York, Julia Dean Workshops in Los Angeles. Bobby's also the chair of the Education Committee for the Advertising Photographers of America. She's a member of SPE, the Society for Photographic Educators, and has authored one book, Creative Techniques for Color Photography. She also illustrated the Lighting Cookbook with Ginny Bidner. Bobby's style is unique and characteristic. You know when you look at a picture that you've looked at a Bobby Lane picture. So please enjoy this time. Bobby?
Thank you very much, Richard. We've all been touched by a portrait, the powerful image of a human being that actually touches our heart, inspires us, and even educates us. It's very difficult to make a good photograph of a human being and get the idea across that you're looking for. There's many aspects that go into it, and one of these is lighting, and that's what we're here today to talk about. Even though lighting is a very complicated subject, it is controllable. We have many tools and techniques, and we're going to show those to you today that are going to help you along your path in becoming a better photographer. I'm always inspired by light's ability to describe texture, its grace, its beauty, its impact, and that's what we're going to show you today. We work with what I call the big three, and that is direction, quality, and depth of light. The direction of light is what defines the photograph. It's where you're placing your highlights and your shadows. The second is about the quality of light, whether it's soft or hard, and that helps set the mood as well as gives you some of the surface texture of the subject. And the last is the depth of the light. In other words, how dark are the shadows? When you have darker shadows, you have a more moody or evocative image. The other thing that's important to understand is your concept. If you don't have a good idea behind the picture, all the technical perfection is not going to make any difference. The whole concept is about having something that you want to say, being clear about that, and then taking these techniques and matching that to your image. What you want to do is create the impact with your viewer, so when your viewer looks at the photograph and walks away, they have the feeling that you intended them to have. Included in this is your approach. Are you looking to light naturally? In other words, make it look as though it's not lit, it's completely normal, natural, available light. Or are you looking for flattering, which is how do you describe the person to make them look the best, to show off their best features? Or you can also look for effective, which is really just looking for impact and drama. We are going to be demonstrating all of these techniques to you today and more. Thank you. Studio lighting is about equipment. There are many tools that are available to us, which is a wonderful option to have. We have many different tools that we can use to help define the idea and help get our idea across a little bit better. This can seem to be very overwhelming at times, but we're here today to be able to take the mystery away from all of this and demonstrate this so that you will have a better understanding and be able to put to use all the different things that we have available to us. This is a softbox. The softbox has this beautiful, soft, even light. This is a strip light in particular. We'll get back to this and tell you more about this. This is a beauty dish. The beauty dish provides this beautiful, soft light. It's great for skin tones. It's great for fashion. It's good for having a brighter, happier feeling. This is a grid spot here, and this is great as an accent light. You can use this for the background. You can use it also for a hair light, and sometimes you use it as a main light when you're really looking for a dramatic effect. All of these things together can seem very overwhelming, but we're here to take the fear away. We're here to take away the mystery. By the time you had a chance to go through this video, we will have demonstrated and shown many different techniques, which you will be able to put into effect right away, helping you to be able to create better photographs. When you first come into the studio, there's a procedure that we follow that helps get everything set up properly and gives you a little bit more control. Obviously, we need to know where the subject is going to be in relationship to the camera before we can decide how we're going to light. So the camera position, setting up the subject and the posing, that's our first choice. You also want to look at the distance between the subject and the background. In this case, we have about 6 to 8 feet between the subject and the background. That gives us plenty of room to be able to use the background lights or to be able to use a hair light. Plus, it also makes sure that your main light is not casting a shadow on the background. So if you've got the room, use it. It really makes it a lot easier for you in the first place. So we start off with examining the face, examining the body, and deciding what the camera height is going to be. So starting off with Melissa, we're going to start off at eye level. So the camera is always going to be shooting straight in and going to be at eye level. This way, this is going to give the most proper perspective on the face. If I was to come down a little bit lower, that would be a corrective technique if somebody had a long nose or a long face. It would foreshorten them a little bit. But otherwise, we keep the eye and the camera lens right exactly at the same level. The next thing that we need to do is decide which side we're going to light from. In some cases, it doesn't matter. Melissa has a very beautiful face. She's symmetrical on both sides. So she does look good going from one side to the other. It doesn't really matter. However, she has one small thing that we would pay attention to, and that is that her hair is parted on this side. So if the part is over here, there's normally a little bit more forehead, so that could be a little more reflective, have a little glow. We don't really want to do that, so we'd light from the opposite side. The other things that you would pay attention to, if somebody had a scar, you would probably want to put that on the shadow side of the face. Or if they had a mole that was sticking out a little bit, sometimes that works better if you have that on the light side, because then it's completely covered in light, doesn't cast a shadow, and it becomes a little less obvious. You've also heard some people say, this is my good side, or this is my good side. In a lot of cases, that is true, because people have asymmetrical faces. So in Melissa's case, both of her sides are absolutely beautiful. She looks great. So we're going to start off with putting the light on her right, on camera left, because of the part in her hair. The next thing that we do, I'm going to come back over here, is if I look at her straight on like this, she's basically a box with a head on it. It just looks like a mugshot. It looks much more attractive when the shoulders are turned. So Melissa, I want you to turn your body towards the light. And now bring your face right back towards me. Okay, so by doing that, what happens is you see how the shoulders have a much more pleasing appearance now. There's a little bit more curve to them. We normally turn the body towards the light unless there's a reason to turn it away. If we have somebody that's a little large or a little round and we want to de-emphasize that, then we could turn their body away from the light with their face back towards the camera. And that, since they'd be in the shadow, would be a little bit more slimming. Okay? But otherwise, we turn them into the light. Okay? The next thing that we do is that we can say, okay, I can look, I want you to line up your nose with my finger, and I want you to turn your nose this way a little bit, okay, and come back this way a little bit. And this way I can just see different sides of her face. Tilt your head just a little bit like that, and straighten it back up again, and tilt back this way a little bit. So you see also, and straighten back up, you see that when we do this, what happens is that you can get a little bit softer look, and you get a little bit more curve in the composition when you do a little bit of head tilt. For a woman, you can tilt both towards the direction that the body is going in, and you can go back a little bit. Melissa, tilt your head back this way again. You see when you do that, you see how that softens the whole overall effect? Now this is not going to work on a guy. It's going to make him look a little bit too soft, but it looks really lovely on a woman. Today we work with strobe lights instead of hot lights. The hot lights are continuous tungsten light sources. They can be floods or they can be spots, but strobes are much more convenient for that. Number one, they're not hot. Secondly, they're an instantaneous burst of light instead of a continuous light source. That makes it very convenient so that people can move, the models can move, the camera doesn't have to be on the tripod, you don't have to worry about camera shake. But it is a little bit different to understand because it is such that a quick instantaneous burst of light that the actual time that the light's on is only about 1,000th of a second. That varies a little bit from strobe to strobe and also how much power is in the strobe. But for practical purposes, you can think of it like that. That means that when we're taking an exposure reading, the shutter speed doesn't really matter. It doesn't have an effect upon the exposure. The f-stop is the only way that you have to control the amount of light that's coming out of the strobe when you're setting it on your camera. What is important to understand is what the sync speed is of your camera so that you can set it properly. Basically what that means, when you're working with a small format camera, you have two curtains, one opens and one closes. When the first curtain gets to the opposite side, that triggers the strobe. If you use a shutter speed that's so fast that when that first curtain gets to the other side, the second one starts to cover the film frame or the digital chip, then what happens is that that part of the frame is not exposed. That's what the sync speed means. You can use anything slower, any shutter speed slower than the sync speed, but not faster. The other thing that's really important to understand about the strobe lights is that they're the same color temperature as daylight. So we are going to use our daylight setting, or if you're using film, you're going to use daylight film. When you're working with multiple light sources, you can use a custom white balance on your digital camera. Otherwise, you can use either your daylight setting or your flash setting, depending upon the camera that you use. When you're working with strobes, it's important that you have a flash meter. A flash meter reads the instantaneous burst of light from that strobe. You can't use a regular meter, an ambient light meter, because it won't be able to register what the strobe light is doing. So this is a meter that reads both ambient and strobe light. This is an incident light meter. You see that it's got this big bulb? I'm going to tell you a great secret right now. The definition of exposure is your exposure is based upon the distance and the intensity of the light source to the subject. Camera position doesn't matter here. And if you think about that, it's common sense. The distance, how far away the light is, and the intensity, how bright is it, is going to determine what your exposure is. That's really a very simple way to demystify the entire exposure problem. When you're taking an incident light meter reading as opposed to a reflective, you go to the subject and you're measuring the amount of light that's falling on the subject. This bulb reads, it's a half a sphere. It reads 180 degrees side to side and top to bottom. That way it's taking in all of the light and all of the shadow and then immediately telling you right now what your setting should be. It works beautifully. Here's the key, and this is the most important thing of all. This requires you to be a thinking participant in what's going on. You need to understand and see the direction of light on your subject, and then you take the bulb and you hold it right at the subject's face. You don't hold it out here. That's actually in the air. There isn't anything here. This is where the light falls, is right on the plane. So bring it right to the face and get the bulb lit the same way that the subject is lit. Push the button, and that's what takes your reading. If you point it towards the light, the exposure reading is being done as though you were seeing it from the light so it's fully lit. But right now we have the light coming from here at a 3/4 angle. She's 3/4 lit. I'm going to hold it right directly in front of her so that my bulb is going to be 3/4 lit, and that's it. That's all I need to do. I don't need to make any other adjustments. I don't need to calculate. I don't need to figure anything else out. It gives it to me all at once. Now, for convenience sake today, this is really great, is to use the wireless transmitters. I can use that both on my light meter, and I can also use it on my camera, and that way I don't have to be plugged into the strobes. I can put these on my light source and on my camera, and I'm all set to go, and I don't have to worry about tripping. What I'm about to teach you, the lighting patterns, is going to change your life. I know I say this kind of jokingly, but at the same time, this is the single most important thing that you can understand and learn about controlling your light. The lighting pattern is referring to where is the light in relationship to the subject. In other words, where are the highlights and where are the shadows? In photography, we're dealing with a two-dimensional medium. And in reality, obviously, we live in 3 dimensions. So we create the illusion of depth by using light and shadow. Light areas have the effect of coming towards us, and dark areas have the effect of going away. So the placement of the light, where it is, how it's falling on the subject, is the single most important thing that you can do. This is your first choice when you're setting out to light. Then you decide your quality and the depth. But right now, this is really important. There's 4 basic lighting patterns, and we're going to take you step by step through them so that you have a good understanding and you can see where the placement of the light is in relationship to the model. The first one that we have, which is already set right now, is the split light. You can see that one side of her face is lit and one side of her face is in shadow. This is a very dramatic light because it's either or. It's half and half. It cuts the face right down the middle and it adds a lot of drama. It also has the illusion of slimming out a round face because since light comes at you and dark goes away, you're taking away the roundness. You just have part of the face is lit. You normally do this on a man, but if you're trying to do something dramatic for a woman, you can as well. I want you to notice how the light falls coming down her forehead and down on her nose and coming down over here. If you look at the inside of her eye, you see that there's a little shadow on the inside right here. You can take that light and you can move it forward just a little bit and it'll lighten up that eye a little bit better. I'm going to do that now so that you can see that. As we move it forward just a little bit, you see how that brings a little bit more light into her eye and it still has the split light. The light falls over a little bit on her forehead, but otherwise it still is half and half. And having better light in the eyes is much more important than having a perfect lighting pattern. We're always looking for that catch light. Sometimes, and I think with Melissa we can do this, if I bring the light around just a little bit more, you see how it started to spill over into her other eye. That's a really lovely effect. So it has the split light, but takes away quite so much from the big drama by adding that little bit of catch light in the other eye. The next thing we're going to do is the Rembrandt light. This is a beautiful light and difficult to do on some people. I want you to notice the height of the light. The Rembrandt light is exemplified by one side of the face is lit and the other side of the face has this triangle of light. The feeling of this is one of great nobility, dignity, honesty, and trustworthiness. It's a beautiful light when you have the right shaped face. On Melissa, it looks absolutely wonderful. She looks as though somebody that you definitely would want to trust. You have to be careful with this light though because it does get very tricky. You need to have that light high enough to be able to make the shadow come from the nose all the way down to the corner of the mouth. I'm going to show you an example right now. Melissa, would you drop your chin down a little bit? When she drops her chin down, do you see how we're losing some of the light in the eye now? And we're getting a little bit of shadow under there. So it starts to make it look a little spooky. And bring it back up again. Okay, so that's much better. Now if you bring it up too much, okay, now that's kind of pretty, but it's no longer really a Rembrandt. You see how the light is coming all the way across her lip? That can be a little distracting sometimes. Bring it down just a little bit more. Okay, right there. This looks really wonderful on her, and on the right person, it looks just absolutely tremendous. So the overall effect of this light is one of nobility, dignity, and trust. The next one is the loop light. This is around front a little bit more, and it's a much lower light. So you see what happens here. We have a little bit of loop of shadow that comes around the nose, and we have shading on one side of the face. So it still has dimension to it. But there is so much light in her eyes. You see how much brighter her eyes are? This is what I call the fail-safe or foolproof light. This light virtually looks good on everybody. It's very rare you'll find